as promised, Jay Morrison, who covers the Bengals. He's a beat reporter. You can check out his work on X or Twitter @byJMorrison. He's a friend of the show. We've had him on before. And ahead of Thursday Night Football in this rematch, he joins us right now inside the vault. Jay, great to see you again. And we always like to start with, and then, of course, these two teams have seen each other. It was a barn burner for sure just a few weeks back. But entering Week 10, the state of the Bengals in your mind is what? And I guess where are desperation levels right now, given the slow start?
Yeah, I don't know about desperation, urgency. Absolutely, it feels if they win this game, it's huge, and you're saying that this is most likely a playoff team. If they lose it, yeah, maybe most likely not, but they're not out of it. It really feels like this is going to come down to the Chargers and the Broncos game, because you have all these teams that are at the top of the AFC. You have all these really bad teams at the bottom. You really have 9 teams battling for 7 spots, and it feels as though the Bengals and the Broncos and Chargers are going to be in the mix for that number 6, number 7 wild card spot, and those head-to-head games would be huge. But if they win this, all of a sudden they're 2-1 in the division. They're right there with Baltimore. Maybe the feeling's the same in Baltimore as it is in Cincinnati. The Steelers are kind of doing this with smoke and mirrors, and you wonder how long that's sustainable. So it is a huge game for sure, and we kind of saw it. The importance of this game Sunday. They have one of their best games against a bad team in the Raiders. Joe Burrow throws 5 touchdowns, and he comes in spitting nails into the post-game press conference. He was not a happy guy. He was making it known to everybody on that team, we're not celebrating this. It's on to Baltimore. Get your bodies right. Get ready to go Thursday night. That's the game that matters.
Jay, thanks for joining us. Really appreciate it. What would you say? It's only been like a couple weeks since these two teams have met. I feel like it already feels like it's been an eternity. I know the Ravens have certainly evolved since that game. What do you think has been different for the Bengals? Like, what have they evolved into since the last time these two teams met? Or how have they changed? How have they gotten better?
I think the biggest difference is that the defense has a lot of their pieces back. They were missing a lot of guys early in the season. It was right away. It was the next week 6, when they got the whole complement of that defensive line back. We haven't really seen the product of that. Yeah, they played well against the Giants. Yes, they played well against the Browns, but those are the Giants and the Browns. Against good offenses, they've yet to put out a good defensive performance. So that's going to be the real tell here on Thursday night is can they slow this Ravens offense down? They gave up 41 in that game, but you go back and you think about that game. I mean, the holder drops a field goal snap in overtime. If that doesn't happen and Evan McPherson makes that kick, we're talking about a Bengals team that's won 5 out of 6. They're ahead of the Ravens in the stadium and the standings right now. The entire narrative is totally different based on one dropped field goal snap. So they are there. They're on the cusp, but we just haven't seen this defense, now healthy, really put together a good performance against a good team. 2 weeks ago against the Eagles, they give up 37. Looked a lot like what happened against Baltimore, looked a lot like what happened against Washington. So I think there's a lot of hope in these young guys on defense. They're going to start progressing and coming together as a unit. You just haven't seen it yet.
Jay, you have a piece up on SI.com that I was just taking a look at. And according to the referee report, the NFL's flag happiest, as you put it, flag happiest crew will be working Bengals-Ravens tomorrow night. Right. And as you see, if you guys are watching us on YouTube or Twitter right now, in the penalty ranking category, that will be advantage based on the statistics side of things through 9 weeks. That will be advantage Cincinnati. What have you learned about the officiating matchup going into Thursday night?
Yeah, so it's Cleet Blakeman. I do this every week, so it's not just a one. Every week I do a referee report, and I look at where this week's referee ranks in terms of most penalties, most penalty yards, and then I run down all the games he's worked with the Bengals in the past, because the Bengal fans love to hate certain referees. Ron Torbert is right up there. He did the Super Bowl loss. The following year, he did the AFC Championship game loss. And it's not just because they lost those games. There were major flag or ruling issues in those games. And so it's just, I think it's a piece that Bengal fans like to read to see who the referee is. Clete Blakeman and his crew, 16.3 penalties per game, 142.5 penalty yards per game. And you're right. It's not just this year. The Bengals, ever since Zach Taylor got here, have been one of the least penalized teams in terms of flags and yardage. But nobody wants to see a game like that. You even if you don't have a rooting interest and you're watching a game and it's just flag after flag, it's hard to watch. It's just so disjointed. And hopefully Cleet's gotten a talking to from the league and needs to get that number down a little bit.
The last thing we need, and with a awesome Thursday night game that's about to come down, it does not need to be spoiled by a bunch of flags.
No.
Jay, in terms of injuries, we've been hearing that T. Higgins has been missing. Looks like Orlando Brown Jr. returned to practice. What do you think T. Higgins' status is, and is there anybody else that we should know of that could miss the game?
Yeah, it doesn't look good for T. We were talking to Jamar yesterday, and he said he was answering a question. And he said something about not having T, and then he kind of caught himself, and he said, "Or last minute decision." It doesn't. This would be the third game in a row he's missed with this quad. He missed 2 with the hamstring to start the season, so he has a history of these soft tissue injuries. It is a big game. It always felt like they held him out last week, hoping he would be ready this week, but it just doesn't look good. Even last night at practice, he was on the stationary bike, but he wasn't really going at it and pedaling hard and trying to get loosened up. So it doesn't look good for him. It does. I think things are better for Orlando Brown Jr. Last week was the first game he's missed in his entire career due to injury. That one definitely felt like a game where they held him out of the Raiders game, hoping he'd be ready for this one. As far as anybody else, you see it on there. Eric All, the rookie tight end, Zach Moss, they put those guys on IR earlier this year. Huge loss. Eric All, if you look at his stats, you think, it's not that big of a deal. He is at the center of the transformation of this Bengals offense. They were always one of the leading 11 personnel teams in the league since Zach Taylor got here, and they ripped it up, and they've been going with a lot of 12 personnel. The 2 tight end looks, they're running the ball better this year, and it's because Eric All is a two-way threat at that, and he was so good in the run blocking. So that's going to be a major issue, not having him for the first time this week. And then Zach Moss too, that only leaves Chase Brown behind, one running back. They just traded for Khalil Herbert yesterday. They're saying maybe he plays Thursday night. Joe Burrow's like, hey, he's going to be standing right next to me. Even if he doesn't know the offense, I can tell him what to do. So that's a little bit of a dicey situation. Geno Stone returning to Baltimore. I even though he's limited there, I think he's going to play. I don't know anybody else is really in trouble of missing this game. Maybe BJ Hill because he hasn't practiced, but they're making it sound like it's not as bad as they initially thought, and he is kind of at the heart of that defensive line, one of their 2 starting defensive tackles.
We're joined by Bengals beat reporter Jay Morrison, friend of the show, making his return here ahead of Thursday Night Football, giving us the Cincinnati perspective. Jay, and the first time these 2 teams met since he held Derrick Henry in check until overtime, as we all remember, 15 carries for 92 yards and that 51-yard burst that set things up in overtime for the Ravens to eventually win that game courtesy of a Justin Tucker chip shot. What's the defensive attack going up against 22 this time around, and how did they do it? And how healthy are they as we look at the injury report as of early this week, or I guess as of Tuesday afternoon, up front as they try to tackle the King?
Yeah, it's interesting. We were just talking about this on our podcast because it feels, no matter if you play well and win or you lose or whatever the situation, when these divisional games, the coaches always want to rip up the game plan from the first time around. It's like, we have to do something different. I don't know that they do. Now that they did something different in the first game, Lou Anarumo blitzed 44% of the time. And that wasn't straight pass blitzes. A lot of it was run blitzes. Just flood the backfield with bodies. Even if Derrick Henry makes a guy miss or runs a guy over in the backfield, you slow that momentum down. He's a guy, you guys are well aware, his size, his speed. Once he gets going, he's hard to bring down. So if you can slow him hitting the hole down by putting bodies in the backfield, you do a good job. 41 yards through regulation, and then he gets the 51 in overtime. So I think we'll see some more of that. Maybe a part of that being so Lou normally blitzes about 22-23% of the time. So we're talking about 100% increase against Baltimore last game. And maybe part of that too was because the defensive line was so banged up, and so they were trying to get more pressure. but just the way this defense is playing, it feels like they have to be aggressive and take some chances. If they can just get a Lamar to turn it over once or twice, I think they feel good about scoring against the Ravens. It's a matter of, can they stop them? And if the Ravens are going to score anyhow, if you sit back, why not blitz? Why not try to push the issue? And why not try to create a turnover? And, oh, by the way, get some people around Derrick Henry's feet in the backfield and slow that attack down as well.
Yeah, this definitely feels more like both teams have the same feeling, like we can score, but can we stop the other side?
Yeah.
Do you feel like Joe Burrow kind of has something to prove, especially with the way it ended when he threw the interception to Marlon Humphrey? I mean, he was just on fire.
Mm-hmm.
And then it was like him in the end. Maybe it was how the route was ran and all that kind of stuff, but it was him who in the end gave it back to Baltimore. They finally got a stop at the end. And it also felt like the Bengals kind of got a little conservative down the stretch. Do you think that sticks in their minds of how that game ended and how they might be different with a different approach on offense going into this?
Yeah, Zach really got hammered for that, for the conservative approach, and he admitted it was not the right way to go. It's not the first time he's done that, and I know Bengal fans would like for him not to say I shouldn't have done that so often, but it is refreshing to hear a coach do that. As far as Burrow, yeah, I think any interception sticks in his craw. I think that was part of the reason he was so angry after Sunday's game against the Raiders. Yeah, he threw 5 touchdowns, but he also threw a pick 6. And I think he was beating himself up a little bit over that as well. But, chip on the shoulder, anything like that, I think all that goes out the window. It is a division game. It's a division game in prime time. It's a division game basically with your season on the line. I think that is going to be the big focus, regardless of anything that happened in the past. They are solely focused on trying to get this win Thursday night.
Can you catch us up to speed on this Jermaine Burton situation? I know he was drafted in the 3rd round back in April out of Alabama. He's a rookie. How much of a distraction is this internally? I know there's some folks like Hilton, some veterans speaking on it. Is it a distraction? What happened in the first place, and where do the Cincy go from here?
Yeah, I don't know if it's a distraction. A lot of people were upset about it. So for people not up to speed, he's barely been used, and part of it's been maturity, professionalism, learning the offense, all that. He's been getting a handful of snaps. He finally gets a game where he has 24 snaps because T. Higgins is out, and they didn't know T was going to be out on that game until Friday. So last week they knew T probably wasn't going to play. They made Jermaine Burton a big part of their package for this game against the Raiders. Shows up late on Friday. And they're like, well, we need him. We still got to play him. Saturday, no shows. No show, no call. Last practice of the week, they were fed up. They made him inactive for the game. They needed him in that game. They made him inactive. It's kind of run the gamut. You mentioned the Mike Hilton comments. Nobody's going to baby you anymore. You need to grow up and be a pro. Other guys are saying, hey, we want to be here for him. We want to help him along. But it did not sit well. And I don't know how you can trust that guy again. They're going to need him if T. Higgins doesn't play, but can you stick him out there and trust that? I mean, is he even showing up for the airport today? Is he going to get on the plane to fly to Baltimore this week? And if he does, if he's on the field, can you trust him to run the right plays? And I don't know. A guy in this situation, you don't want to throw him away, but I think they need to roll it a little bit slower with him. And that's what Joe Burrow is all about. He's had guys released from this team before because he didn't have that trust factor. They weren't running the right routes. And I don't know, even if they play him, I don't know if Joe's going to trust him enough to throw the ball to him.
Well, Jay, we know you're always busy covering the team. So unless, Bobby, you have anything else, I'll finish up with this. The biggest matchup that you're going to be watching and your prediction.
So I guess the biggest matchup I'll be watching is what the Ravens defense does against Jamar, because it totally changes with no T in there. And are they just dead set on taking him away? And I think that'll open up Mike Gesicki and some other people. And then what the Bengals defense do, Lou Anarumo against Lamar Jackson, so to speak. How much does he pressure him? How much do they blitz? That's going to be the most interesting matchup for me. We just did this on our podcast. We did the predictions, and I think it's going to look a lot like week 5. High scoring, back and forth, lead changes. Sad Bengal fans at the end of the game. I've got Baltimore 35, Cincinnati 34.
Okay, and that would really kind of put their postseason hopes hanging in the balance, right?
Yeah.
Jay Morrison covers the Bengals for SI.com, BengalsTalk.com. Anything else that you'd like to promote, you can be found on Twitter or X at @ByJMorrison. What else you got going on?
Yeah, I mentioned the podcast a couple of times. I do a podcast with Paul Dehner Jr. from The Athletic. We have one on Tuesday, one on Thursday, and then we do one immediately when games end. So cover all kinds of things on there. Have a really interesting conversation with Andrew Whitworth on today's podcast that just dropped a little bit ago earlier today. He's obviously on the Amazon crew that'll be doing the pregame studio show or the on-field show tomorrow night. So even if you're a Ravens fan, Andrew Whitworth is a very interesting guy, and he has a lot of interesting things to say about the Bengals and the way that organization is run now and when he was there.
Awesome, Jay. We appreciate the time. Enjoy it. I assume you're coming out to Baltimore. If you are, safe travels, and hope to do it again down the line.
All right, thanks. Good talking to you guys.
Thanks,
Absolutely. Jay Morrison for the Bengals perspective, Sarah, and a Ravens win according to his prediction. Time for ours.
Yeah, time for ours. Well, it's funny because he literally stole my exact prediction score. So maybe I'll switch it up just to be different or whatever. But I agree with him. I think it's going to be another shootout. I mean, well, look, it could be both defenses could surprise us, right? Like maybe they're going to be like, you know what? I'm sick of people talking about us, yada, yada, yada. But I just have a hard time seeing Joe Burrow and Lamar Jackson slow down. When he said, that they might be more aggressive and go after Lamar this time, I think by halftime they will change that approach because Lamar Jackson has been so good against the blitz. He's been so good. He's a different animal this year in terms of like going to the line with the pre-snap reads, knowing where he wants to go with the ball. Like if Jay Morrison had said that, 1 or 2 years ago, I'd be like, oh shoot, don't know that the Ravens have an answer for that. But between the Ravens screen game and what they've been doing with Justice Hill when they blitz, Lamar, like I said, his pre-snap reads, it just doesn't make you as nervous as it once did. And I just feel like at home Thursday night, Lamar Jackson during primetime regular season games often shows out. And I really do think that missing T. Higgins hurts the Bengals. It does make things much easier on the Ravens defense. They still have their young number 80 or 81, their young guy whose name I'm forgetting, who's been ascending. But he's exactly right. Like the Ravens can focus on Jamar Chase and then make other people beat him. I'm a little bit nervous about the tight end situation, given what the linebackers have been doing. So that's why it's still going to be a high scoring game. But I do think that the Ravens at home, prime time, Thursday night, new alternate jerseys, all that kind of plays into it. Crowd behind you. I was going to say 35, 30, 34. I mean, it's still in that area. What, 33, 31? Both in the 30s, but the Ravens come out with it.
Under John Harbaugh, for whatever it's worth, the Ravens are unbeaten on Thursday night at home. 8-0 under John Harbaugh Thursday Night Football at home. This is a Bengals team, as I tried to set Jay up off the top, that I felt like, and he used a different word. He used they have a sense of urgency.
Yeah.
I used desperation. Because that's what I think they're going to be playing with on Thursday night, which is why I have them beating the Ravens and splitting the regular season series 30-28. They're 4-5 right now, Sarah. They need this game if they want to be in the playoff picture. Is it an absolute necessity from a mathematics standpoint? No. But here's why I think they get the game. I don't trust what's happening in the interior part of the Ravens defensive line right now.
Mm-hmm.
And while the Bengals rushing attack doesn't scare you,
well, especially because they're going to have a new guy that they just traded for a day ago.
They will.
It's more than not scaring you. Are they going to be able to put something together?
They're going up against practice squad elevations in the interior part of the Ravens defensive line that I think potentially could be there again in Chris Wormley and Josh Tupou. You've got no big Mike Pierce, the run stuffer specialist, for the next few weeks. Brent Urban remains in concussion protocol, barring something unforeseen changing between now and Thursday Night Football. And we know Travis Jones has been banged up, and they're trying to get that ankle back to where they need to be. I don't trust this pass defense. Jamar Chase lit them up for a $193, and while the T. Higgins presence is notable, I don't fully trust this secondary yet, and I really don't trust them to bring pressure and make Joe Burrow uncomfortable. And if you keep him in the pocket and you allow him time to survey the field, he will kill you. And so I'm going 30-28 in a game that the Bengals need Thursday night.
Let me tell you why Jay is correct and you are wrong. I'm just joking. But seriously, about desperation versus urgency. I hear what you're saying within the division, but you really got to look at who they're competing with in the conference. And, the Jets are still behind them. They're right there with the Colts. The Broncos are right there too. The Broncos play the Chiefs. Like, it's not going to be an end all be all for them. Like, I still think they'll be right in the middle of the AFC standings. So I think that's why he's saying, urgency, but not desperation.
Sure.
So, but to your point, they're going to be motivated. They're definitely going to be motivated. And the Ravens have no shortage of motivation either. They've got no shortage of it, especially on defense. And so I just have more faith in the Ravens offense because they have, I was going to say all their pieces. We'll see about Isaiah Likely. Outside of him, they have all their pieces. They have a run game that's like unstoppable right now. They have a play action game off of that running attack that is almost unstoppable right now. In fact, I've got a video of Orlovsky kind of pointing that out. I just think that the Ravens offense is going to be more automatic than the Bengals, given that T. Higgins is likely to be out and they're bringing in a new running back that they just got yesterday. Here's
more primetime numbers. John Harbaugh's 21-3 record. That's an NFL best. 875 winning percentage in primetime home games. He's 8-0 at home on Thursday Night Football, as I mentioned. Lamar is 9-1 in home primetime games, including 2-0 on Thursday Night Football. In terms of the game itself, Purple rises at 8 o'clock. The halftime show, Chase Rice, if you're into country music, that'll be awesome. Legend of the game is the aforementioned Brandon Williams, Big Baby, who just retired as a Raven. Parking lots open at 3:45. Ravens walk 5:15. The gates to the bank, 6:15. You already know where I'm going to be pregame at the Be More Around Town. Tailgate, 801 West Austin Street. I would love to see you guys there. And who knows, maybe there will be a guest appearance virtually from Madison.